Good morning, class!
Jimmy Urine from Mindless Self Indulgence is being sued for having a very inappropriate 2-year relationship with a minor. That's the clean way of putting it too. I want to start this off by saying that this video feels weird for me to make. And I'm not saying that because I'm probably going to have to dance around a lot of language for it to be YouTube friendly, or even because of the serious subject matter that we'll be discussing. I'm used to both of those things. What feels weird is the fact that I like this guy's music. You know, I used to listen to Mindless Self Indulgence as a teenager, and even just 3 years ago, he released a solo album that I enjoyed. You can see where I'm going with this, right? If you're familiar with my channel, you know that I cover some pretty serious topics. And you know, I like to keep the tone of the videos to be pretty lighthearted. You know, I'll throw a joke here and there because it can get pretty heavy. Now, with that being said, I'm still processing all this because I like this guy's music. I just wanted to start off with a disclaimer because I don't know how this is gonna turn out. So if you're familiar with MSI, you already know that this video is gonna have a guaranteed stamp of extra freaking weird. And if you have no idea who I'm talking about, well, get ready for me to take you on a ride. So shut me up and get into it. What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel, Edwins Generation. So today we're talking about the singer from the group Mindless Self Indulgence, Jimmy Urine. Yes, that is urine as in PP. Of course, that's not his real name. His real name is James Euringer, but that's his professional name. Or sometimes he goes by Lil Jimmy Urine. I guess it depends on his mood.
My name is Little Jimmy Urine from Mindless Self Indulgence.
Mindless Self Indulgence is known for their very unique sound, tacky and often offensive lyrics, and Jimmy's style of singing, which is basically all over the place. The bassist of the group, Lindsay, is actually married to Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance. You guys know that one, right? Well, come on. I'm not okay. Come on, you guys know. Anyway, now that we got the basic intro on who we're talking about, let's get into the dark stuff. And again, this is weird for me to say out loud because I like this guy's music, but it is what it is. Jimmy Urine from Mindless Self Indulgence is being sued for having a very inappropriate 2-year relationship with a minor.
Happy Sweet 16!
That's the clean way of putting it too. Now before we get into the details of this lawsuit, I want to point out that the woman has filed to remain anonymous, so she's being called plaintiff throughout the lawsuit. It's also worth noting that some of the details in this lawsuit can get pretty gross, so let this be your trigger warning in case you need it. This action arises from Euringer's continued sexual assault, battery, and abuse of a 15-year-old girl, which occurred for nearly 3 years. In 1996, Euringer, a musician and self-proclaimed pedophile, met plaintiff in New York and groomed and manipulated plaintiff into believing that his sexually assaultive behavior was not criminal and that by engaging with sexual activity with him, plaintiff was actually helping to protect younger girls from sexual assaults. I mean, yeah, this is loaded. It sounds weird to read, but I guess it's basically saying that, hey, what we're doing, thanks to what we're doing, I'm not abusing other young girls. This is what it says. During that 3-year period, Euringer repeatedly sexually assaulted and molested plaintiff. And by the way, Jimmy isn't the only defendant in this lawsuit. Also included are people that are associated with his past record label that are being said to be complicit and also have enabled him in his actions. Anyways, it goes on to say that despite obvious signs that Euringer was engaging in predatory conduct with plaintiff, Elektra Entertainment defendants and or those 1 through 5 chose to sign Euringer and his band Mindless Self Indulgence and or distribute their music through a record label that they operated known as Elektra Entertainment. Elektra knew or should have known about Euringer's sexual predation from his own promotion of himself as a pedophile. The band's lyrics discussing pedophilia, including a song about staring at the panties of a 5-year-old girl and wanting to wet her, Euringer having underage girls pay him $1 to kiss him at concerts, and MSI's album artwork containing references to Now keep in mind, everything that I'm reading right now is actually just the summary of the allegations. So in a bit, we'll be getting into the details of everything that is being referenced right now. Because yeah, it's really loaded and we'll be able to unpack everything. Obviously, we're not a court of law by any means, but we'll be able to see just how damning it is or isn't against Jimmy Urine. Whew, damn. I need to drink some water. Euringer also brought plaintiff, then underage, to concerts and private recording sessions where he hugged and kissed her in front of agents and employees of Elektra. Despite the signs of Euringer's abusive conduct, Elektra continued their business relationship with Euringer, and their investment in him continued to promote his music and continued to set up and promote his shows to put him in direct contact with other underage girls, often in private settings through the distribution of VIP and backstage passes, instead of protecting plaintiff. Gallus, Mindless Self Indulgence's longtime manager and producer, similarly ignored Euringer's predatory behavior and failed to protect plaintiff, even though Gallus knew that Euringer was a pedophile and that Euringer was engaging in sexual activity with plaintiff while she was a minor. Gallus continued working with Euringer, advanced Euringer's career, and allowed plaintiff to attend recording sessions and concerts with Euringer, even providing VIP passes and backstage treatment. Okay, so now we're naming the manager who apparently knew about it all, and he's obviously also a defendant, so he's gonna have to testify. This is getting interesting. In doing so, defendants knowingly, intentionally, willfully, deliberately, and or recklessly fostered a pervasive and hostile environment that utterly disregarded the rights and safety of plaintiff and other minors. With their knowledge, relationship to Euringer, and control over Euringer, his shows, his music, and at times his access to minors, defendants had the opportunity and ability to stop Euringer's sexual assaults and to protect plaintiff and others, but did not. As a result, plaintiff has suffered humiliation, shame, and horror that she will continue to suffer for the rest of her life. Again, that was just a summary as presented by the lawsuit, and now we're going to get into the factual allegations, as the lawsuit calls them, but I'm going to be reading them a little bit more loosely because I feel like the language, the way it's written out, it can be difficult to read. And also I'm changing out Euringer, which is, Jimmy Urine's last name, to just Jimmy, and I'm gonna be calling plaintiff, which is, Jane Doe, just Jane. In approximately fall of 1996, Jane and her friend, both minors, traveled from their homes in New Jersey to the city of New York. While in New York, Jane encountered Jimmy on the street. At the time, Jimmy was approximately 27 years old and Jane was only 15 years old. Both Jane and Jimmy were dressed in alternative fashion, and Jane complimented Jimmy's hairstyle. Rather than just acknowledging the compliment, Jimmy began conversing with Jane and her friend and joined them in traveling around New York. What, like a chaperone or something? But a stranger? While traveling through New York, Jane, Jane's friend, and Jimmy encountered a filming location for the official music video for the song Da Funk by Daft Punk. They were recruited to be extras in the music video, and from that night, despite their age difference, Jimmy encouraged and pursued a friendship with Jane. Jimmy got her phone number and began talking with her for the next several months. Jane saw Jimmy again on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1996, when she was still just 15 years old. At the end of the evening, Jimmy asked Jane to go on a date with him, and they would go on to spend more time together. That's not romantic, bro. Don't let it be true, Jimmy. What the hell, man? During their third encounter is when Jimmy apparently inserted his 27-year-old ding-dong while she was still just 15 years old. Dog, dude, bro. Don't tell me that's how Jimmy gets down. Please.
That's how Jimmy gets down.
From around January 1997 to June 1999, Jimmy continued to groom and manipulate Jane into thinking that his highly inappropriate behavior was not criminal and that they were in a totally normal relationship. You know what I'm still trying to get my head around? It's Jimmy's silence. Because this story first broke on August 9th. And ever since he's just gone into hiding. He's posted nothing on social media, he's disabled his comments, and he ignored the Rolling Stones request for comment, which obviously responding to such a big claim is a big deal. So you should take your time and make sure you have a good response, because it's a big deal. But I feel like this is such a strong allegation that why can't you deny the root of it, being that I never had a relationship with a 15-year-old when I was 27? That should be it, right? That should be it. That's it. But the accusation doesn't even end there, man. It says that you put your ding-dong in her, and you also did more things that we'll get into. And I don't know, man. I don't know why you can't just say that you didn't do it. Well, what's going on? I guess you have to wait to go to court. Have you been served? Are you waiting to get served?
I can't talk about it right now. I'm in the middle of a lawsuit, baby.
Did the homie really predict his own future? Because the snippets that I'm playing are from a song that he released 2 years before this lawsuit. It should be so easy to deny, but I'm afraid that he might actually be living in denial, like he said in his song.
I'm living in denial, but I'm going out in style.
Imagine if I got copyright claimed for this. That would be so lame. During that time, Jimmy made sure that Jane would come to see him in New York nearly every week, typically on weekends. When they saw each other, Jimmy would hug, kiss, and provide other displays of affection towards Jane in public, while working, going to concerts and music studios, parties, etc. And Jimmy would also insist on putting his ding-dong inside her when they were alone in his apartment. Okay, alright, yeah, well, that's what it says. During this time, Jimmy often took pictures with Jane, including while he was kissing and hugging her. Uh-oh. This is not good. What? This is why you've been quiet, huh, Jimmy? Jimmy also photographed Jane nude in the bathtub and while she was topless. Oh, come on, man. What the fudge? What the actual fudge? As foreplay, and even when they were getting down and dirty, Jimmy frequently requested for Jane to act like a small child and suck her thumb, drool, and pee in her pants. Dog. What? Jimmy also wrote letters to Jane telling her that he missed her and described her feelings towards her. In one letter, Jimmy told Jane that he loved her and wished her a happy 15th birthday, even though it was actually her 16th birthday. Through this letter, Jimmy is clearly acknowledging that she was a minor. Yeah, clearly. Jimmy often took Jane to concerts and through one of his friends got her a fake ID stating she was 21 years old. At these concerts, Jimmy would encourage Jane to use this fake ID to consume alcohol despite her status as a minor. During this time, Jimmy acted as and treated Jane as though she was his girlfriend and the two were in a consensual relationship. Even though he had Jane believing that they were in a regular relationship, Jimmy tried to silence her from disclosing any of the inappropriate stuff by telling her not to act affectionately around others and to quote-unquote play it cool until they were in private. Jimmy, however, was a self-proclaimed and self-promoted pedophile. So despite his own instructions to Jane, a minor who, let me remind you, cannot consent to such acts, his quote-unquote relationship and physical affection with her was openly known to the whole band, MSI, Gallus, the manager, Jimmy and Jane's friends, and eventually Elektra's agents and employees, and anyone who spent time with Jimmy and Jane. So basically, it was like an open secret within MSI's inner circle. To this day, Jane suffers emotional distress from Jimmy's assaults. Alright, now this next section is called Euringer is a self-identified and self-promoted. Dude, can you imagine someone you knew was sued in the Supreme Court and the lawsuit had that for a title? That's so intense, man. Jeez. At all times relevant herein, Jimmy publicly and continually admitted that he was a P-word and attracted to young girls. In or about 1996, Jimmy and MSI even published an advertisement for a drummer actively looking for someone who quote-unquote did not mind drumming for a band of P-words. Okay, yeah, but in that case, is the rest of the band also P-words? I mean, I don't know. You guys can see the ad right here, but I don't think this is the best piece of evidence. Definitely a strange ad and even weirder to call yourself that. I mean, I can't imagine trying to defend that in court and being like, Your Honor, my client was just kidding about that. Jimmy gonna be rolling up in court like, it was just a prank, bro. It was just a prank. The artwork for MSI's first album, Tight, is a close-up drawing of a female child's growing. In the drawing, the child is wearing underwear featuring drawings of children's toys and stuffed animals. You know, I'm surprised that the lawsuit doesn't include the fact that the album title, Tight, is placed in a very specific area. Euringer also referenced the liking of children in his lyrics. The song Panty Shot contains over 20 references to the sexualization of 5-year-old girls. The song describes looking between a 5-year-old girl's legs and wanting to spread her legs and wanting to F and touch the children. Wait, what are the lyrics of this? 5-year-old panty shot, I can see between her legs. 5-year-old panty shot jump. Yeah, okay. This feels really weird to say out loud. Am I gonna be in trouble for even searching this? Panty shot, I can't complain. I didn't even touch her, so I can't be blamed. My life has meaning when she spreads her legs, bruh. Oh my god. Dude. This is... Okay. Me suffer again because me want to F and touch the children. Oh yeah, this is not good. Okay, yeah, God, I feel like I'm going to jail for listening to this. The song attempts to justify the innocent nature of this predatory desire because the P-word, quote-unquote, didn't even touch her. He just wanted to touch her. A few years back, he did a live Q&A on YouTube with his wife, and one of the questions that he was asked was, what song's given the most grief? And one of the songs mentioned was Panty Shot.
And the other one that gets the most is Panty Shot, because they're like, "Why are you writing about that?" And it's like, you don't have. You can write from the perspective of somebody else.
You can write from serial killers. You can write from whatever you want.
Fucking idiots.
So his response is basically that, oh, it's not from my perspective. What? I was writing the song from the perspective of an actual P word, not me. I feel like that's the closest thing we have to a response from Jimmy for anything related to this lawsuit. I was unable to find any other clip or interview of Jimmy talking about this particular song, so I find it interesting that there should be so much annoyance at the mere question considering the nature of the song. Now granted, his wife did basically take over the question, but still, Jimmy's entire career exists from being one of the biggest edgelords in music. So it just feels like the wrong attitude to have when your band's goal is to offend people. Maybe I'm nitpicking here, but bro, you wrote a song about a 5-year-old's panty shot, and then later you write music about how you can sleep well at night, that you don't care how you offend people. So, you know what I mean? You can't blame people when they look at you weird for the stuff you write. Alright, let's get back to the lawsuit. In the years since Panty Shot was released, Jimmy did not attempt to conceal its lyrics and release. Instead, he continually promoted the song and referenced it in later works. In 1998, as a part of the promotion of the band's Tight album, Jimmy re-released the song. Then, 3 years later, after the initial release of Panty Shot, Jimmy released the song I Hate Jimmy Page with the following lyrics: "Who liked that song 5-year-old panty shot? Yeah, that could be a big record cause it's got the bump with the molestation."
Who like that song, 5-year-old panty shot? Yeah, it's a real big record. You got the bump with the molestation.
Further, Jimmy continually referenced Panty Shot during his live performances. For example, during MSI's 2005 recorded live performance, Our Pain, Your Gain, which was later sold as a DVD, Jimmy jumped off of the venue stage and into the audience, where he began repeatedly chanting Panty Shot and encouraged the crowd to join him. It seems like this lawsuit is trying to build up the narrative that Jimmy has always been the big bad hiding in plain sight. However, this particular example did not go exactly as described. In between songs of this concert, Jimmy said that he wanted to play the quote-unquote concert game and be the audience.
Let's play concert the game. I get to be the audience. I called it. You're always the fucking audience.
Then he goes into the crowd and chants,
Panty shot, panty shot.
The lawsuit argues that he's doing this to encourage the audience to join him, when in reality, as silly as it sounds, he's really just role-playing his own audience. In fact, earlier in the same performance, the audience was chanting out the song title.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was this guy's show. Hold on. There you go.
So, he was pretending to be the audience requesting the song from earlier on in the same night.
Blah, blah, blah.
Jimmy's P-word tendencies are also documented in letters and communications to Jane. In one letter to Jane, Jimmy described a recent visit with his family and wrote that he enjoyed visiting them because, the P-word stuff aside, the children that he visited were sweet and cool and a lot of fun. So although this lawsuit does not include any copies of the letters that Jimmy supposedly wrote to Jane, I would assume that they are real and readily available considering they're being directly quoted, right? And of course, it's not like the initial filing of a lawsuit is gonna bring all the evidence that they have against them, especially when you consider how damning that evidence could be in the court of law, You don't want to show all your cards. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but at least that's like the way I'd be thinking about it. Jimmy told Jane that even though she was underage, she was old enough to spend time with him. He also manipulated her into believing that by being in a quote-unquote relationship and being subjected to his assaults, she prevented him from assaulting even younger girls. So there's not really much information elaborated on this specific point, but I'm assuming that it would be based on testimonial from the accuser, considering that this lawsuit is requesting a trial with jury. So, I guess she would give her testimonial, her experience in much more detail, and then the jury might make a decision based from her story. But when was the last time a case like this even went to court, let alone have a jury? Imagine this blowing up. Whew. Knowledge and reports of Jimmy's attraction to those significantly younger than him continue to circulate to this day. Recently, pictures of Jimmy's wife, Chantal, and a man wearing a masked full-body rabbit suit at a themed party surfaced publicly. Upon information and belief, the man wearing the rabbit suit is Jimmy. That party was hosted by none other than James Gunn. And upon information and belief, attendees to the party were encouraged to dress like P-words and abuse victims such as children. I know lawsuits often like to fluff up information against the person that they're prosecuting just to make him look bad in general, but I'm not sure this constitutes as an example that would make Jimmy the P word, you know. If anything, it looks worse on James Gunn, you know, the one dressed as a priest. Some of you may remember James Gunn being cancelled back in 2018, not for this party, but for a lot of offensive tweets. After being fired by Disney, he issued an apology stating that those tweets were the old him, you know, trying to be a provocateur. He was endorsed by a bunch of celebrities, and then he got uncancelled, meaning he was rehired by Disney. However, unlike James, Jimmy had a different attitude regarding his past dark humor. He released a solo album in that same year, 2018, and had a song called Do You Kiss Your Mama With That Mouth? In the lyrics he says, the things that I say may not be right, but after I say them I sleep like a baby at night. Number one question on everyone's lips is, hey mother fudger, do you kiss your mama with that mouth? Yes. What kind of baby do you sleep like at night, Jimmy? The lyrics continue his legacy of not caring who he's offending, so why crumble or get offended or annoyed when you're asked about your offensive song, Panty Shot? Anyways, we got sidetracked. Back to the lawsuit using Jimmy's attendance to James Gunn's party as an example of knowledge that he's into kids. What about everybody else? Are they into kids too? You see, that's another slippery slope that I find to be a bit too much to just casually assume. Call me optimistic and feed me a sandwich, but as tempting as it may be to fall into that conspiracy hole and believe that Disney rehired a P word that hosted a party full of other P words, it's just a bit much. Now, Jimmy's wife Chantal seems to be the only person from this party to have addressed it, and she said,
"The only thing anyone at that idiotic party was guilty of is bad taste, which is a totally fair opinion. To insinuate anything else is absolutely ridiculous."
In 2020, hashtag Jimmy Urine is over party and hashtag MSI is over party were used on Twitter to discuss Jimmy's career and misconduct, including his song Panty Shot and videos of him kissing underage girls that were posted on social media. The lawsuit bringing up Twitter hashtags is what I would consider to be lawsuit fluff. You know, like, okay, wow, they had a hashtag about Jimmy Urine. But I do gotta say, they bring up again the point of Jimmy Urine kissing young girls at concerts. And you know, this is brought up throughout the lawsuit a couple other times. And yeah, he did it. He did it a lot. And it wasn't even hard to find. The lawsuit states that Jimmy frequently kissed fans, including minors, at his concerts. For example, during one performance, Jimmy held up a sign that read, "Kisses $1, VD free." It looks like they might be talking about this video because sure enough, you see him collecting money and getting his kisses. Or I guess, his fans getting their kisses. So let's lay out both arguments here. The simplest one against him would obviously be, what the hell is he doing kissing young fans? And I would even add on, why does he have a personal cameraman following this around? Well, I suppose it could be argued that having a cameraman and security surround Jimmy as he offers kisses for $1 is accepted as part of the act, you know, part of the show. When the lawsuit emphasizes Jimmy kissing minors, it applies an intent and intimacy that may not actually be there. You could say that many of the fans are not underage, and he's not exclusively kissing girls, and the kisses are sloppy, they're not meant to be intimate. But he still kissed the young ones. The lawsuit brings up Jimmy kissing underage fans to exemplify him being a P word, you know, and to express his predatory nature. And while I do think it could possibly be argued that it wasn't being predatory and it was part of the act, there is still footage of him kissing numerous teenagers. Why have I never heard Jimmy talk about this in an interview? Like, why doesn't he talk about these antics? You know, I want to hear from him. Because what the hell, dude? Why are you doing this? The last thing from the lawsuit that I think is worth noting is that MSI created t-shirts with the girl's face, the Jane Doe from the lawsuit, while she was still a minor, and sold them at concerts. This is what the shirt looks like, and yes, it does say it takes a nation of crackers to smell my crack. So what's the verdict? Well, I'm no judge or jury, and this is not a courtroom, so I'm not looking to answer that question. Now, even though we can't say whether Jimmy's guilty or not, there's no sugarcoating just how bad he looks throughout all this. I mean, simply being sued in the Supreme Court for this, yeah, it's pretty grave, and not to mention his lack of response. The lawsuit was filed back in August. We are now in December, and there's still absolutely no response from Jimmy. Not even a brief legal statement, you know? So it makes a person wonder, like, why can't you deny any of it, you know? If he's not quietly planning to fight the hell out of this lawsuit and even countersue for defamation, because let's face it, his reputation is in the toilet, then it's not gonna look good for him. I mean, all we need is a few photographs or whatever evidence that this accuser may have that is being mentioned in this lawsuit, and it feels like it could be case closed. I mean, in my opinion at least, those would be the winning factors in the case, you know, over the James Gunn party. Unless they plan to go after James Gunn after this. As of right now, there's not much movement in the lawsuit since it was filed, and I know I joked earlier whether he'd been served or not, because obviously he needs to be served for this to even happen, but it could be a real possibility that maybe he hasn't been served, and that's why it's not moving, you know, because he does live in New Zealand, which Sounds like it could make things a little bit complicated. I don't know. I'm not the legal expert here, but I will keep you guys updated as the story develops because this is very interesting. You know, it's interesting that it's an accusation from an anonymous woman through a lawsuit with no response. Now, I feel like these 3 factors alone make the case quite unique. Typically, when this type of story surfaces online, you'll have at least some loud voices quickly defend the accused. And in this case, I'm not finding that so much, you know? I looked through the Reddit and a lot of fans are very disappointed. Some are angry. There are some that can separate the art from the artist, but others that simply can't find themselves doing that because a lot of the art is so, you know, hypersexualized and immature, and sometimes they can seem to lace together with the accusations. This is why I'm saying that Jimmy better have a good plan up his sleeve, because it feels especially indefensible when you don't even say something. You don't give people something to work with. Now, I did reach out to Jimmy myself, but much like Rolling Stone, I got nothing. But if I could ask him something, I would ask him, are you not worth defending? Why don't you say something? Let's talk. Guys, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Maybe hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload in case I do upload again. I'm kidding, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. Yeah, this is my first upload of the year. The longer I went without uploading on this channel, the more intimidated I became. There's no easy way to say this. I feel like I lost my mojo and I've had a pretty terrible year and been stuck in this mental rut that I'm trying to climb out of. So hey, anybody else out there that's also trying to climb out of this mental rut, whether it be creative or otherwise, cheers to you. We're in this together. Let's climb, huh? One step at a time, you know. I don't want to say I'm back because it's just one video, but I'm hoping to make at least 2 more videos by end of year. Because I have some things to say to some homies that I've covered in the past. Brian Warner, don't think I forgot about you, homie. And DeAntword, yeah, I got some things to say about all these homies. Beyond that, I do have some curiosity for some new topics that I'm exploring, but I won't make any mentions or tease anything because, like I said, my comeback isn't real until I make at least 2 more videos. I'm not about to tease anything that I can't deliver on, alright? But hey, one step at a time, y'all. Now show me some love and validation, and let's get this video to 10,000 likes. Oh, can we still do that? Honestly, I won't even be embarrassed if it only gets like 2,000 likes, okay? I get it. I haven't uploaded in a while. Punish me, whatever. No, on the real though, I appreciate you guys for sticking around. I don't know how this video is gonna do, but I hope it does okay because I don't see anybody really talking about this, and I'm like, oh, come on. I couldn't have been the only teenager that listened to MSI growing up. This is a big deal. Well, relatively, right? If you guys want to see more of me, check out my other channel, Homeboys Got Receipts. This is where I live stream very casually, alright? Don't have the expectations of this channel. Just take a little tour on the channel. If you like it, subscribe. If not, you can stick to Edwins Generation. No problem. Are you Gucci? Because I'm Gucci. Alright, Gucci out. Oh, what?